Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome everyone to Coffee Talk. We are your hosts. We've been off for a week, so we're so happy to be back. We are your hosts, the small but mighty Southborough Youth and Family Services Department. My name is Sarah Castle. I'm the Director of Southborough Youth and Family Services. And with me this morning, we have Megan Island, who's our Assistant Director, Shannon Knyman, who's our Program Coordinator, and we're very appreciative and excited to have Kerrie Toole, Licensed Clinical Social Worker and Director of Castlebrook Counseling Services in Westboro with us this morning. Thanks everyone for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, I've got two. Hang on.
Okay.
This is how my morning has gone.
Yeah, we established just a few minutes ago that 3 out of 4 of us, Megan, I don't know, maybe maybe it's 4 out of 4, had a very poor night's sleep last night. We could have easily, recorded this episode at 3:30, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So we are at least 2 coffee cups deep this morning. But we're so grateful you're all here with us. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Coffee Talk is an opportunity for us to reconnect with each other. We could very easily use our show to talk about current affairs, but we very intentionally do not. We feel like everybody's getting plenty of news elsewhere. And so we try to provide helpful information. We like to share a laugh with one another and really try to introduce people from our very special community who you might want to know better. So Kerrie has done a number of parenting workshops with us. She also is, well known in the Southborough community, and lots of folks go to her workshops and her groups. So we're thrilled to have her here. And if you're just being introduced to her for the first time, or if you've known her for a long time, either way, we think Kerrie is an incredible resource to both our department and to the community. So, thank you for being here. And she tells really amazing jokes.
Amazingly bad jokes. Let's just qualify that a little bit. Amazingly bad jokes. Yes.
Well, that's what I think makes them so amazing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we like to start every show with some humor. We've all been sort of throwing around the idea of different segments for the show, one of which that seems to keep coming up over and over again that some of us may relate to is a segment we've been calling I Love My Children, but so last week we had a coffee break because my family and I went camping, and I had an I love my children but moment at 3 a.m. in my tent. And I immediately thought of the show and I said, you have to remember this moment. I know you're tired, but you have to remember it because this is what you will share when you come back. So I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, 2 very active little boys. And my 4-year-old, as 4-year-olds go, he can be pretty unreasonable at times.
That's their job at 4.
Yeah.
4-year-old.
Unreasonable.
Shocking.
And emotional. Yes.
Shocking news.
Yes. And just take that and put it into a 3 a.m. context, and you add, overtired to the mix. And dirty. We our campsite happened to be, what was really nice is we were right on this road, or campground road, so it's not really a road, but they blocked it off because they were trying to block off different sections of the campground to minimize the number of sites that were being used. So we were right next to an enormous dirt pile. So I had mixed feelings about the dirt pile because on the one hand, my little boys found it very entertaining. They did lots of digging with their beach shovels, and but on the other hand, I just had to look away because they were taking handfuls of dirt and, you know, using it like confetti, and yeah, it occupied them, which was helpful.
The great outdoors, the great outdoors.
Yes. Yeah. But so at 3 a.m. on Thursday evening, this past Thursday, my 4-year-old has a tendency, sometimes he is unreasonable, emotional, overtired, and often in the middle of the night will wake up, and I swear he's not actually awake. I think, you know, it's like he can't see us, he doesn't hear us, he's just flailing, crying, you know, emotional and demanding. So he did this on Thursday night in our less than soundproof tent in the middle of the woods where other people are also camping, and woke up screaming for Fig Newtons.
Hate when that happens.
No.
If I had a penny.
So fortunately,
Had Fig Newtons?
we had Fig Newtons.
Whew.
So I think there was some level of consciousness here. If he had asked for like edamame or something,
You would have been toast.
Yeah, I would be in real trouble.
Yeah.
But so he's crying and screaming for Fig Newtons, and I'm trying all these different, you know, these different avenues of like, honey, it's not time to eat right now. It's 3 a.m. I'm rubbing his back. He's just thrashing everywhere, you know, just so then I'm getting more stern. I'm like, you need to go to bed now. Everybody's trying to sleep. You're waking up the entire campground. So it goes from like really sweet whispering to like really stern whispering to finally I go, fine, I'm going to get you Fig Newtons. So I put on my headlamp and I go out and I'm searching all of our stuff for Fig Newtons. I come back with the Fig Newtons and he says, no, I don't want Fig Newtons.
Oh my God.
He throws them across the tent. Meanwhile, my 7-year-old wakes up and says, I like Fig Newtons.
Since you're here.
And I'm like, you go to bed right now. Do not contribute to this. It's not time to eat. So my 4-year-old continues with his craze and like just would not be satisfied no matter what we did. It led to whisper fighting between my husband and I on what we should do. Why we were whispering, I don't know, but eventually we got him to calm down. But I just found the humor in the whisper fighting. And, you know, to show how frustrated I was, I slammed the flap of the tent shut, which made no noise at all.
Nice.
And I very angrily, I zipped it as fast as I could to show how frustrated I was. It was, so in that moment, I said, I love my children, but I don't want to go camping with them again for a while. It was, I want to say that we had a wonderful time. It was really nice. It was nice to see my kids enjoy the outdoors, have fun in the dirt. And the silver lining here too, and I thanked him the next morning. If I hadn't been awoken at 3 a.m, what I wouldn't have known is, so the place we were staying was about a mile from the beach, right from the ocean. And during the day, the tide goes out. So it's, you know, you have to go pretty far to actually get into the water. But the tide comes in the middle of the night. So because I was awake, I could hear the waves crashing from my tent, which I was like, you know, thank you. for waking me up and helping me appreciate what I didn't know was there. So that was one nice thing. And I did thank him for that. And he was like, okay, Mom, I got to go ride my bike now. Whatever. You're weird.
Yeah. Oh, I get that all the time. You're a braver woman than me because camping, children.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I just say vacationing and children is really not vacation.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah. We're going to Maine in a couple of weeks. It's where I'm from. I grew up in Maine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep. And so out in the boonies, the town I grew up in still doesn't have a single stoplight.
Oh, wow.
In the sticks, right? So I grew up with the camping in the woods, and camping to me is like Appalachian Trail camping, like peeing in the woods camping. And I'm like,
you're all done with that.
Done with that. I need running water.
Yeah.
And I need electricity. So we rent a cottage on the lake, and so I can yell and scream at them all I want and not have to whisper fight, just actual fight with my husband. So maybe later when they're older, we'll talk about it, because I do want to have them have that experience, but I'm over it.
Yeah. No, we do have a lot of equipment. Like, we're up off the ground now. We did get a site with running water and electricity, which was good, but it's still camping.
Rustic.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for letting me share my story. I did enjoy recounting it in preparation for our show. So we wanted Kerrie to come on because Kerrie, as I mentioned earlier, is a licensed clinical social worker and the director of Castlebrook Counseling. We also at Youth and Family Services provide counseling services and something we call clinical consultation. And so we hear over and over again lots of questions that people have about therapy, and thought that it would be helpful for people. Now in particular, it's wonderful, and at the same time, a sign of the times. I think a lot of people are seeking out counseling services right now. It's a particularly hard time in our history, and it's good to know that people are looking for help, and that the stigma hopefully is decreasing. But also, there's a need. So we wanted to use our time today just to talk about some of those frequently asked questions as a group. And I guess we'll start with a question that we've heard before. How do I know I need therapy? How do I know I should go? We all have emotions. How do I know when the time has come that I might actually need that extra support? So Kerrie, do you have any thoughts in response to that?
Sure. Yeah. Oftentimes, people kind of stave off and they're like, no, I can get through it. It's just, a rough patch. I can kind of soldier on, stiff upper lip it. And then, when they kind of have that aha moment that, oh, geez, I'm in over my head here and I don't know what I need. It's kind of it's going to be a little bit harder to access therapy. So knowing when therapy might be useful is when the challenges with regulating your emotions are really starting to impact your day-to-day, right? So are you not sleeping, barring what, the excitement for us? Mine was because I watched Hamilton up too late. But, if there's a pattern of not sleeping or lack of energy or losing interest in things that used to be enjoyable, feeling disconnected, turning to external things to kind of make us feel better, so to speak, increased irritability, maybe there's more fighting with a spouse or family members or something. When things are starting to
she's talking to you, Fig Newton lady.
I mean, perfect example. But I mean, those are one-offs. We all have those, right? We all have those moments. And when it's isolated or kind of like a small pattern, like we all have those moments, right? But when it tends to be something that is more the norm than an isolated incident, like that's when you want to kind of, maybe explore the option of kind of, calling someone to kind of talk stuff out with.
Right.
Yeah.
Megan, this kind of reminds me too of some of the, so Megan and I both are mental health first aid trainers, and we talk about this a little bit. Do you have anything you want to add? I'm in particular thinking about functioning, the message that we give, which is along the lines with what Kerrie was just saying, that
right. Thinking about if these things that Kerrie was talking about, how they're impacting different areas of functioning, and so if we're thinking about if it's impacting your interpersonal relationships, or is it impacting, if it's a young person, how they're performing in school, or if it's an adult, how are you performing in work?
Yeah.
Is it impacting your social relationships, things like that? And so when these things you're struggling with, if they're starting to impact how you're functioning across different facets of your life, that might be a time to then reach out and start to explore the option of pursuing counseling.
I'll just say, and I know we're biased, but I feel like there's always a good time to go to counseling, because even when you think you don't have something to talk about, I can't count the number of times somebody has come in and just said, oh, it's not really anything going on. And then by the end, they're just like, I really needed that today, I think that we carry around, we're not even conscious of what we're carrying around sometimes.
Yeah.
But
And there are different types of therapy to address both of those kinds of things, right?
Yes.
So you have like your crisis, like, oh my gosh, I need help now kind of therapy. And then you have your kind of like, I want to kind of do a deeper dive therapy to kind of say, like, what are my patterns? What are the things that are obstacles in my life that that come from, just patterns of my life and ways that I understand myself and my environment and my relationships. So there's all kinds of different, goals in therapy. So to kind of know what your goal might be.
Absolutely. That's important to know. And I'd like to just add, I kind of said it a second ago about the stigma, but I think that going to therapy is a sign of health versus a sign that something's wrong or broken or needs fixing. That's unfortunately one of the pieces that comes along with the mental health field, is that there's a long-standing stigma attached to it. But I feel hopeful that that's decreasing. So
yeah, definitely is. Yeah. By the volume of phone calls that we're getting, and I'm sure you guys are too, like the stigma is kind of being put off to the wayside. Yeah.
Right. So the next question we hear a lot is, how do I even start? Where do I start? If I'm past the point where I am unsure of whether I need therapy or want therapy, where do I start? How do I find a therapist? And how do I know if this person is the right fit for me?
Right. So it's kind of like, the process is kind of like finding a unicorn, right? It's really complicated. There are a lot of steps, unfortunately, just again, because of the volume of calls that are coming in. And it's important. I say all the time to people who are calling, especially first time callers, but even people who have seen therapists previously at different points in their life, that it's really like trying on shoes to find the right person who's going to have the right skill set and takes your insurance and has openings when you have time to come in. Like there's a lot of different factors that kind of have to match up, right, in this kind of Rubik's Cube of finding the right therapist for you. So, it's how I might start, and what I recommend for a lot of people is, like, first off, determine, do you need to use insurance? Right? Because not all therapists take every insurance plan. So it's kind of like you could, call up, the 80 bazillion therapists in your range, or you could start with your, if you do need to use insurance, if you do choose to use insurance, there's usually a find a provider page somewhere that gives you people who are contracted providers for that insurance within a certain radius. And sometimes you can search for, age range and specialty and gender and all these different factors. And there are member services representatives if you need something more specialized, like what I do in terms of treatment. If you're looking for eating disorder treatment, if you're looking for EMDR, DBT, whatnot, right? Those are very specialized treatment protocols. And even therapists who say they do these, put it on their website, don't really do it. So make sure you're vetting people. And they have people you can call to kind of, help you find a contracted provider. So that's one level. And then another level is, do the people have openings? Do the therapists have openings? Right. And that in and of itself is kind of hard to come by right now. A lot more flexible via telehealth, which is wonderful, because usually this time of year, we're not going to take referrals for kids if we don't have openings before 3:00. But given this year, who knows what's going to happen. So we're still placing those referrals. So time of day, that those are factors that we kind of have to, and doing telehealth, people can do it at work now. Right. So it actually does offer us a lot more flexibility to get people in. So that's a factor. Is the therapist trained in the treatment issue you're coming in to work on? Right. So if there's a significant, symptomology, like eating disorders, trauma treatment, substance abuse, you don't want to just go to any therapist, right? You want to make sure that this person knows what they're doing in this department, right? And again, a lot of therapists will put that they do certain protocols on their websites, but not really. So ask questions, do your research. And then, and then it has to be a good personality fit. Right. And this is where the trying on shoes thing comes in. Right. So
and what do you mean? Sorry to interrupt you, Kerrie.
Oh, no, go for it.
What do you mean by trying on shoes?
So it's kind of like, you got to find somebody who you're comfortable with. So it has to be the right vibe. Right. So if, and one of the questions we actually ask our referrals at that intake call, and I have a clinician, it's really important to me to have a clinical lens on this matching process, right? So one of the questions we ask is what energy? Are you looking for someone who's a little more warm and fuzzy validating? Are you looking for someone who's not going to sugarcoat it and wants to get in and just make it happen, right? Are you looking for someone with a good sense of humor, someone who's going to, be a little more, reserved, right? And so because if I've got some therapists who are very direct, no nonsense, shoot from the hip. And if I pair them with someone who is kind of looking for more of a nurturing, then it's not going to work. Right. So it has to there has to be that personality click. Right. You have to feel comfortable with the person, because you're not going to go deep and share all your vulnerabilities if you're not bonded with that person.
Right. Shannon, you made a good point. So even if you go through that process of thinking that you've walked into what's going to be a good match over time, especially if this is your first time in therapy, you may find, that you weren't sure what to expect. But Shannon, you made a good point earlier when we were talking in preparation for our show today.
Right. Yeah, it's not always the right match. That sometimes you'll see someone and it just, like you were saying, that you think that you found the right person, but after you've had a session or two with them, you might say,
Yeah.
you know what, this isn't working. And I think all of you said to that that's the sign of a good therapist, that they're going to say, good for you. You know, I'm glad that you were able to recognize that, and we got to find someone that you're going to work with and that's going to help you. So,
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and to add to that, you know, that it doesn't necessarily, because we're all human beings, you know, not to expect, I guess that it's not a reflection that the person is not necessarily a good therapist, but that the chemistry between these two between client and therapist are not necessarily a good fit.
Yep.
To that end too, we also encourage people to give it a try, because sometimes what happens when you're going into therapy is what you're actually feeling is just a sense of discomfort because it's new, and don't mistake that for, you know, the therapist not doing a good job, or, you know, it just may be a reflection of, you know, and that actually, without discomfort, it's hard to create change.
Right.
So to expect that that's going to be the case.
Right. Right.
You're not going there to talk about, like, well, you might be going there to talk about, you know, all the stuff that's going great, but you're also there to talk about what things you want to change and what growth you want to see happen, or something that's really hard that you're going through.
Right. And especially, like, to be aware, and most people don't know this going into therapy for the first time, especially if you're using insurance. We have to do some things in those first 1 or 2 sessions to fill out insurance requirements. Right. So the first 1 or 2, maybe 3 sessions are gonna be about, like, us gathering background information. Right. And that's something that insurance requires. Right. And that's something that, you know, good therapy would do anyway. So just to kind of, like, give me the lay of the land, what's gotten us to here? Have you, like, even, you know, what's family history look like? What medications are you taking? It's a little, you know, like 20 questions in those first couple sessions. So it can feel really uncomfortable that, you know, I just met you and you're asking me all these, like, you
Tell
know,
me all your history.
Right, exactly. Right. So it's going to be uncomfortable those first few sessions, because we have to tick some boxes, unfortunately. Right. Because in order to build the insurance, we have to come up with some sort of diagnosis code. Otherwise, they won't pay for therapy. So so that's part of, like, what we're trying to gather is, you know, what kind of, you know, code can we, you know, put on the paperwork so that we can continue doing the therapy to do, like, the work that we're actually going to kind of agree to do.
So I was a little disillusioned in thinking that we could answer all of our questions in the amount of time we had. We're going to have to do, like, a coffee talk special, an after school special, to really talk about some of these things. I just wanted to take an opportunity to ask Kerrie about the services that are provided at Castlebrook, but I also wanted to mention that something that I said at the beginning of the show, which is that we have clinical consultation services. So being a town department and responding to the needs of the whole community, we are doing our best to try to provide people with support to finding providers through their insurance. We have counseling services available here, but in terms of being able to support people long-term or getting them the help that they might need longer term, we try to provide people with referral support. So we will help you with the legwork of looking at, you know, whether you need to use insurance or not, and if you do, all of those pieces that Kerrie was talking about earlier. And also, if you're really in a place where you're unsure of whether you need therapy, or maybe you've determined, I need therapy, or my child or my loved one needs therapy, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what therapy is the best fit for me. I don't know what all these acronyms mean and all these letters after the person's name. Please feel free to make a clinical consultation appointment with us. We can talk you through some of those pieces to give you a little more the answers you might need to your specific questions. So Kerrie, we'd love to have you back. Please, for our viewers, tell us more about what you have available. I know you guys are quite busy over there.
Yes.
And so you may not have any openings right now.
I think we have some. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we want people to know about you guys, and you, in addition to providing counseling, you're doing some really excellent workshops and parent support work, groups. So please tell us more about what you have to offer over there.
Sure. Yeah. So over at Castlebrook, which is in Westboro, we've got about 23-ish different therapists that that see clients, and we've got a big range of specialties. So it's kind of one-stop shopping, and that's part of that initial conversation that you have with our clinical intake coordinator to kind of see, like, what are you looking for? Do we have someone who specializes in that? So we've got people who see littles, like 5 years old and up, and we've got people who specialize in working with elders, couples, families, you know, the classic individual therapy, adolescents. We have someone who does hypnotherapy, which is super cool. We have a couple people who do exposure and response therapy for like OCD, anxiety disorders, a couple eating disorder specialists. And then a good chunk of us, not all of us, but there's a sizable chunk of us who are specialists in dialectical behavior therapy, which is a very intensive
DBT. If you see DBT somewhere, that's dialectical behavior therapy.
One of those alphabet soup, you know,
yes,
like letter combination. So it's like cognitive behavior therapy, CBT. We've got a lot of folks who do that, plus some additional layers of stuff. So it's like hardcore. And very intensive. So we've got, you know, people who take like most of the insurances. A lot of people right now are doing telehealth. So that allows for flexibility. We've got a lot of people who are, you know, a handful of people who are still meeting in person, you know, with precautions, et cetera. And part of DBT and part of the treatment protocol with that are DBT skills groups. So it's 1/4 of what the full DBT treatment protocol is. And the research shows, and DBT is one of the most heavily researched types of therapy, and shows proof that it works, which is like phenomenal. Because usually if it's not a treatment protocol like that, the data says most people get better in therapy when they have that connection with the therapist. It's almost irrelevant what the treatment protocol is. And there are like 52 different types of therapy, but it's really about that bond, right? Except for things like DBT, EMDR, exposure and response therapy. Like the treatment itself works. So the skills group, especially for adolescents, is shown to have proof that it is beneficial for teens, especially. And then, so the teen groups, it's about skill building, skill development. So it's not like a, you know, pour your heart out kind of therapy group. It's not like that. It's a curriculum based kind of thing. And we like to make it fun. And then, you know, I noticed, you know, in my years doing this, that the parents were really desperate for a lot of these skills and techniques and just the foundational concepts of it. So I run a parent skills group that is kind of like a, you know, a highlights, you know, a Reader's Digest version of what DBT is all about for parents. So at least they kind of get, you know, the angle that DBT works from. So, and I do those, I'm doing a summer one that's like a twice a week one because of the demand. And then usually I do a 12-week parent group in the fall and then another one in the spring. So, and then the groups, the DBT skills groups basically last about a year, once a week for a year. So it's fun. I have a good time.
That's great.
And tell my bad jokes.
And that's where I was going to say, and that's where she, you know, practices most of her material. So.
Yep. Did you hear? Yeah. Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon?
No, I was trying to figure out if I could. No.
The food was great, but there was no atmosphere.
But
So just give your viewers a little taste.
Yeah. She'll be here all night, folks. Well, thank you very much. I have a feeling, we had a number of questions that we wanted to ask. Our hope is that we can have Kerrie back again, but we'd like to, as we always do at the end of the show, invite viewers to write in to us, especially after this. If you have specific questions that come out of this conversation or questions that you had that did not go answered, please let us know, because then we can really focus our time on answering some of those. And again, please reach out to us if there's a more specific conversation. We want to give you the time and attention that your situation or your questions deserve. Either way, reach out to us. And at the end of, when we post the recording of this show, we'll have Castlebrook's information on how you can get in touch with Kerrie and her team over there. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Next week, I don't know if anybody knew this, but July is National Parks and Recreation Month. So we are having
Amy Poehler?
No, Ron Swanson. No, actually we have he often references Ron Swanson. Tim Davis, who's the new director of Southborough's Recreation Department, is joining us next week to talk about some of their programming. And, we all know how important exercise, physical activity, being active is for mental health and for well-being. And so we'll talk about some of that and have an opportunity to highlight what kinds of opportunities are available to Southborough residents through the Recreation Department. So please join us. That's next Tuesday, 10 a.m. on July 28th. So thank you very much, Kerrie, again, for joining us today. This was so fun having you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Such a great resource for our community, and we hope to have you back again.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.